Goldie is in Toronto. They landed a couple hours ago. He is with us now on the Toyota of Hollywood hotline. Are you still on a high, Goldie, or are you starting to process it all?
No, it's still amazing. You know, the interesting thing about this team, you know all the cliches in sports talk, and you know it's on to the next one, turn the page. They're not doing that. These guys are still basking in the glory of what they did. I think that's awesome. You know, I think not enough teams in sports do that. So I think it'll wear off, a couple hours in it tonight, and then tomorrow it'll be gone, and it's, a whole new series. But I'm still enjoying the heck out of it. Why not?
And Goldie, when did you really think they had a chance in the series and the game? Because even going into Game 7, we're still playing the record-setting Bruins. You know more than me. When did you think a legit chance was there?
I thought they had a legit chance to win the series, honestly, when they won Game 2. And then it waned when they got beat at home. And when they got the leads 3 times in Game 5, I really was confident. And when Tkachuk scored, I was super confident. And when they came home and not only beat them, but that was like pedal to the metal, the full game. And they had the Bruins running around. They scored 7 goals on them. They hadn't given up 7 all year. I was pretty confident going into last night. Now, when Pasternak scored, I was thinking this is a problem. But let me tell you, if you watch the game, you heard me say this with 2-3 minutes left. I said, this game is far from over, because I've seen them over the last 2-3 years so many times come back late in games. And, their confidence never waned. So, I went up and down like everybody else during the series. But after Game 2, the whole game in Game 5, obviously Tkachuk had the score, the series was over. After Game 5, I really thought that they had a legitimate shot to do it.
Steve Goldstein is with us. By the way, he talked about watching him last night. I obviously was watching Bally Sports last night. That's the end of the line for the local telecasts. Obviously, on radio, you'll be able to hear the game. Tomorrow, the game is on AM 790. The Heat game will be on 560 AM. Panthers game will be on AM 790 tomorrow. There's a national TV broadcast. But I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Goldie, Bally Sports Florida will have post-game once the game is over.
That is correct for every game the rest of the way. Same thing with the Heat. They did it in Game 1, and, the Heat-Knicks is the same story. So, really appreciate it, Hoch. Bally Sports, after the first round, it's the national television contract that the leagues make for the NHL and the NBA. It all goes national, but we should really all thank Bally Sports that they care enough about our local teams. So we've got these post-game shows with interviews, and, I'll be here in Toronto covering it. So once the game ends, yes, flip on over to Bally Sports Florida, and we'll be there live at the post-game show.
So do we owe an apology to Paul Maurice? Do we criticized him on this show when they went on that 4-game. I know I do. When they went on that 4-game losing streak, I eviscerated him. But has everything he said come to fruition?
Well, that's the great point, Hoch. So first of all, when you go from 122 points and then you're 9 out halfway through, and then you lose 4 in a row and you're 3 points out with 8 games left, and it looks bleak, and your job is to analyze sports. I'm not that sensitive. You know what I mean? I think you have every right to say what you want to say. Performance is performance. And most head coaches in sports will readily say, yeah, and it starts and stops with me because I'm the guy in charge, whether it's right or wrong. So, but everything he, had been preaching to this team about how hard it is, and once you think you're working hard, you're not working hard enough, because the playoffs are just a beast. And then for it to come to fruition against that team, because that's like, Paul Maurice told me this morning when I was talking to him, he's been around for 25 years, been in a ton of playoff series. He said that's the hardest, the biggest, heaviest team he's ever seen. He goes, they got guys that are scratches that would be on teams' third lines. And he's accurate on that. So I think there's a little bit of a validation there that what he's been trying to do, and Hoch, you're 100% right. The first 3 months of this season, with them trying to incorporate this thing, it wasn't working. It looked bad. They were 9 points out. And even at the trade deadline, there were NHL people saying, yeah, the Panthers should be sellers, get rid of Gudas, get rid of Reinhart, get some picks back. But I'll tell you what, here we are 8 months later, and everything that he was preaching about, here's the way you need to play to win in the playoffs. You got to change it. It kind of came to fruition. Now, that said, they also played a couple of fairly high-scoring games here, but you saw the hardness that they played with. And in my mind, Matthew Tkachuk has changed this whole thing. He really has. He's Dwayne Wade walking through the door. He's Dan Marino walking through the door and getting out in training camp, and Don Shula goes, oh, I guess we're not running the ball 40 times anymore. We got this guy. That's what Matthew Tkachuk has done for a team that's already really talented, but he's brought all that other grit and soul and heart to the table.
And Goldie, it kind of pissed me off when I heard him say it, but you let me know I was legitimately mad. The Boston collapsed. The Panthers didn't beat them. Boston collapsed. They lost it, and the Panthers didn't win it.
Well, it's interesting, Crowder, because I thought if you listen to the Bruins players and their coach, they don't say that. I thought the Bruins players and coaches throughout the series have been too respectful of the Panthers. They've given the Panthers so much credit. So I'm with you. I don't buy it. It's not a collapse. When they were up 3-1, the Panthers played a hell of a game in that game 5. I mean, Boston did a good job just coming back and getting it tied a bunch of times. And by the way, they only played 13 minutes of overtime in the series. The Panthers dominated once these two games, game 5 and game 7, got to overtime. And, what the Panthers did in game 6, that was just incredible. I mean, that goaltender had given up a goal and a half a game all season, and the Panthers scored 6 on them. So I'm with you, Crowder. People can say what they want, but we know what we watched. And I also listened to what the Bruins players like Brad Marchand say, and they gave the Panthers, again, so much credit. I think they were almost too respectful for a team that's the number 1 seed.
Goldie, I was talking about it earlier today that Boston is just a hockey mad city that, a lot of South Floridians I don't think can really relate to what Boston is like when it comes to that Bruins team. And especially this season, what was that arena like yesterday when they scored that game-winning goal? What was like? I mean, was it just? It had to be almost indescribable.
It was the strangest thing because there were times in that game, like when the Panthers were up 2-0 until they started getting the penalty trouble, the fans were booing them. I'm like, this is game 7. These guys have played 88 games this year. They've won 68 of them. So the fans are booing them. Then they get the goals. The fans are going nuts. It was like a huge roller coaster. But when Carter Verhaeghe scored, I mean, it was dead silent, and you could just feel it. Like they were just standing there and looking at the Panthers celebrate. I think they were totally stunned because I think all along, most of those Bruins fans, they lost 7 games all year at home. The Panthers beat them 3 times in the series. I think until Verhaeghe scored, all those people in that building, they thought they were going to win the game. But remember, it is Boston. And, until recently with the Red Sox, they've always got that kind of deep down in their soul, kind of like you Cubs fans, Hoffman, of, hey, what's going to go wrong? When's the other shoe going to drop?
And Goldie, were the Panthers playing possum with these special teams? Because it doesn't seem like they're that weak when the playoffs started.
Well, I thought the power play was really good, Crowder. They scored in the last 4 games. Obviously, the 6-on-5 goal to get it tied, which in essence is a power play. So they got the power play going once and that's another little wrinkle. We got to give coaching credit. They made a change on that power play. They put Bennett out in front of the net where he plays so well, they got to cover him. They put Parkoff up at the line, and that gave them a little bit more room and space. The penalty kill, my gosh, man, there's no other way to say it. I mean, it was bad. But the funny thing is, we all kept saying, and I'm sure you're watching the game going, oh my God, another penalty. You can't keep taking this many penalties. Well, they took that many penalties. They gave up 1 million power play goals, and they still won the series. So, it's not a formula to win. I also think there were a lot of close calls that didn't go their way. but the penalty kill is going to have to be better against Austin Matthews and Marner in Toronto. But again, we've been saying that for 2 weeks, and here they are still playing. So maybe we're wrong.
Well, just don't get penalized. You don't have to be on the penalty kill if you don't take
Right.
them penalties. You're in Toronto. Just preview it for us a little bit. This Toronto team, I watched them. During the season, but against Tampa too. I mean, this is a really good team.
Yeah, they're terrific. Look, they finished second in the division. I mean, you think Boston's the best of the best. Toronto's right there with them, I think. It's another series where they don't have proven goaltending. That proved to be a huge factor in the Bruins series. The Panthers got saves when they needed, and the Bruins didn't enough. I mean, that's the bottom line. In overtime, Sergei Bobrovsky made the saves at the end of regulation in game 5 and 7, and the Panthers scored in overtime. So they play a similar system, similar style to Boston. So that'll certainly help the Panthers because it's a continuation. Look, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, I don't want to say more talented than Pasternak, but they're probably, if they were on the Bruins, they'd probably be the 2 best players on the Boston Bruins. But again, Hoch, another team where if that Panther forecheck can get in on their defense is not great. Their goaltender is the guy that the Panthers beat last year. He was with Washington in the first round. That they won the 2 games in overtime and scored the 5 in a row, and they came back, in game 4 at home or game 5 at home. So, I think to me it's a toss-up matchup. They've got a great chance to win this series. Toronto has kind of made that turn like the Panthers kind of have of playing harder hockey, less reliant on skill in the postseason. And obviously knocking out Tampa was huge. They beat them 2-1 in overtime. But I think this momentum the Panthers have, I think tomorrow night's a huge game. I don't usually say that in game 1, but if the Panthers can come in here and knock them flat on their butts and punch them in the mouth and get a 1-0 lead, I think that'll go a long way. Toronto could also be a little bit like the Panthers last year. And Hochman, I know you kind of talked about this last year where it had been so long since they won a playoff series that once they won the first round, it was almost like a little bit of a subconscious relaxation because, we finally got that done with. And before they knew it, they were down 2-3 nothing to Tampa. Toronto hadn't won a playoff series in almost 20 years. We'll see if they have that kind of, attitude that the Panthers had last year.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. Like Toronto fans, they finally breathe a sigh of relief. And so maybe there is that little bit of letting their guard down. Hey, I got to know officially because we have a bunch of games coming up, 4 at least. Mm-hmm. Is it Ilya Samsonov or Samsonov?
So that's so funny you asked that because he was Samsonov last year. You're right. In Washington and all those years in Washington. Then he goes to Toronto and he tells everyone you've been saying it wrong all these years. And I guess they said to him, well, you didn't tell us. He goes, yeah, I didn't bother. Anyway, it's now Ilya Samsonov. So that's his name.
All right. So we're all in agreement. Crowder, Solana, it's Ilya Samsonov, and that's what we will mispronounce for the next couple of weeks as we talk about this Panthers Maple Leaf series.
Listen, illicit Samsonov ain't gonna do nothing to nobody.
Oh, he's pulling a little Bill Parcells when they asked about Terry Glenn. She's okay. She's doing fine.
Are you going to get some poutine in Toronto, Goldie?
Yeah, I will usually, Montreal is the famous poutine and smoked meat, but, I'm going to scout it out. I'll dig it up. Of course, Hochman, any food recommendations? I know you're big on that you would have for me. Feel free.
High's Steakhouse. I spent a couple of weeks in Toronto this summer. Did you go to High's Steakhouse?
Well, if you spend a couple of weeks here, you also spend a couple of paychecks at High's Steakhouse. So it's like $100 a steak. It is literally up the street, and I definitely will be going there. 100%.
That's all I needed to know. Goldie knows. Goldie knows how it's done. Because Plagans, do you know Plagans had 6 meals at Cheesecake Factory in Boston?
That doesn't surprise me.
What, a cashew chicken or something?
Yep,
same thing.
You're exactly right. Same meal. He says, play the hits.
Play the hits. No, and he likes something. He's got all these strange food habits. Like he doesn't eat soup. no hot liquids. Like he's got all this weird stuff. So when he finds something he likes, he's on it. You've been through all this with him before, I'm sure, on the air.
Yeah. No, he locks in. And so he found a burrito place that he liked in Boston. He would go there for lunch, and then he would sidle up to the Cheesecake Factory bar at night and have the cashew chicken.
Yeah, there's some, let me tell you, in Boston, there's some great seafood places, get that fresh fish, little lobster roll.
And a lobster roll.
I usually go with whatever and the North End, amazing Italian food on Hanover Street. I usually go with whatever's big in that city. Like when I go to Chicago, of course I do the deep dish, you just got to do it.
I've got to interject, though, no Plagan slander specifically after that series. I believe his food choices in Boston were superstitious, Goldie, and it worked. It worked. The same meal, the same restaurants every single time, and the Panthers won the series. Plagans won the Panthers a series, in my opinion.
I like
Goldie,
that. They did win 3 in a row in Boston. They won 3 in a row. I wore the same shoes, very funny, game 5 in Boston. I wore them again game 6 at home, and they got the win. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Did you wear them last night?
I didn't wear them last night.
Oh,
I had them back for a week.
Goldie, what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, are you with us or are you against us?
No, because I had a pack for a week, and they were like brown shoes. But what I did is I busted out the Game 5 suit, and I brought that one back to Boston. I wore it last night.
Oof. All right.
Well, what are you wearing tomorrow? You're going to wear that tomorrow? Wear whatever you wore last night. Wear it tomorrow.
Really? The same suit?
Same suit. And tell Moeller the same thing. Same suit.
I brought extra underwear. You want to wear the same underwear too? I mean, what's going on?
Underwear. If we're doing superstitious stuff, you got to stick with it.
Yeah, Goldie, just turn them inside out.
Don't even do that.
No.
All right. Listen.
Does it make a difference if you turn them inside out?
Save the bill from High Steakhouse. Send it to Crowder. He's just texting me that he'll pick up the tab.
Crowder is going to pick up the tab at High's?
I just went bankrupt.
Let me grab the 40 ounce. Let me get a 32
My bad,
to go
man.
for lunch.
I'm terrible with money.
Tell Moeller to go all in.
And I'll have 11 old fashions. Thank you. Send it to Crowder. CROWDER. Crowder.
Time of your life. Time of your life. Put that pivot money to use. All right, Steve Goldstein. So again, no Bally Sports Florida broadcast of the Panthers tomorrow, but you can watch Goldie on the post-game show. After the game is over, you just tune over to Bally Sports Florida. You can watch Goldie there. And by the way, again, for the radio, you can listen to Doug Plagans from Toronto tomorrow on 790 AM. The former 790, the ticket, 790 AM. That is tomorrow for the Panthers. Thank you, Goldie.
Thank you, guys. And by the way, it's the first time ever in the same city, the same market, that the 8 seed has beat the 1 seed in the NBA and the NHL. So let's just keep on kicking ass in South Florida. Thank you.
Hey, which one do you think was more impressive? I was going to ask you that. You think the Panthers knocking off the Bruins or the Heat knocking off the Bucks was the more impressive upset?
I would only say the Bruins because they were the best regular season team ever. Like the Bucks were the best regular season team this year, but they weren't like the 72-win Bulls. You know what I mean? The Boston Bruins, no one's ever won 65 games in a regular season before. So for that reason, I just think the Panthers' opponent was so high above and beyond off the charts. But, I wrote this article on, CBSMiami.com about Jimmy Butler and Matthew Tkachuk. Like these two guys just put everybody on their back and said, we're not losing. And I see a big similarity there. But the way the Heat are playing, man, they might just keep on dominating the Knicks. Once they sunk their teeth into that game, they own that game. The Knicks had no answers for the Heat.
I'll tell you what, that's kind of like what you said about tomorrow night with the Panthers in Toronto. The Heat just did that in New York yesterday, which was go in there, take their soul on the first one, and then kind of you're in the driver's seat. Yeah,
it's a great point. And the other thing we're learning is these home court and home ice especially home ice, not only is it meaningless, I might rather be the road team because when you get home, you got all these distractions. You got family, you got friends, people with tickets. Some guys have kids. Like on the road, all these guys are hanging out together, eating together, practicing limited, and showing up and playing the games. It's like laser focused. So both teams you look at, they've both been unbelievable on the road so far in these series. It's amazing.
Thank you, Goldie. We love you.
Love you too. Bye.